of Gog and Magog have been trapped behind a metal wall for thousands of years and will remain there until we approach the final strait of the end times. Now, let's just think about that for a second. Imagine we have a large group of people who belong to troublesome tribes. Dhul Qarnayn comes along and builds a big fat wall. You'll have to excuse my primitive artwork here. These people are now standing behind this big wall. Can't they just walk around the side of one of the mountains? If we're talking about a spherical Earth, one wall between two mountains is never sufficient as a permanent tool of incarceration. It would, though, make a little more sense on a flat Earth if this tribe was somewhere near the edge. We know that this wall should be huge because of the sheer number of the people who are supposedly trapped behind it. The Quranic verse detailing the time they are set free tells us they swiftly swarm from every hill. If they are a lost tribe of 5 or 6 people, then they might be hard to find. But if there's at least hundreds of them, then it's ridiculous to suggest they've evaded us all this time along with their huge metal wall. The Bible mentions Gog and Magog in several places and also predicts their emergence near the end times in the book of Revelation, where it tells us, "When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison, and will go out to deceive the nations in the 4 corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, and to gather them for battle. In number, they are like the sand on the seashore." So we can see that Gog and Magog are actually very numerous in the Bible. It says, in number, they are like sand on the seashore. 1. People have looked across every inch of the planet's surface and found this heart shape in New Caledonia, this side profile of a woman in Alberta in Canada, and these red lips in the deserts of Sudan. You'd think the existence of this huge metal wall between 2 mountains would have been seen by now. Now, you may think, well, according to this authentic hadith, they are digging at the wall every single day, nearly reaching the end, and just as they're about to break through, they stop work for that day and go to sleep. During the night, Allah builds it back, and they wake up to see the wall back to where it stood originally. They are apparently so stupid that they will continue digging tirelessly like this every single day for thousands of years, until one day one of them says, "We will finish it off tomorrow, God willing." Aha, the good old Inshallah. And then God will think, well,
I can't screw them now. They did say God willing after all.
So he leaves their progress alone, and they wake up the next day and finish off the job, before somehow creating absolute chaos across the world with their primitive weapons. Are Gog and Magog really that stupid? When you see this pattern of nightly regeneration repeating itself, can they not just split the workload into day and night shifts across 24 hours to get the job done? Can they not sleep right next to the point in the wall that they have dug up to? So moving on to who are the Gog and Magog. Now Muslim scholars believe they are humans primarily because of the hadith mentioned earlier, stating they were descendants of our mythical ancestors, Adam and Eve. But there are some hadiths telling us that these tribes had some bizarre shapes to them. There's a narration which is not classified as authentic, but is still believed by some Muslims today, which states that Gog and Magog are 3 types of people. The first are really tall like palm trees. The second are as wide as they are tall, so basically square-shaped. And the third group have ears so large that they use their ears to wrap themselves with as blankets when they go to sleep.
Like I said, Dhul Qarnayn, where is Gog and Magog, Yajuj and Majuj? There's supposed to be, millions and millions of them stuck behind this dam. We haven't found any giant gate anywhere in the world. I mean, even some of the, I think it was Omar, we went to look for it and they didn't find it.
Assalamu alaikum and hello to my non-Muslim viewers. Today I'm going to be talking about Gog and Magog and the wall of Dhul Qarnayn, and the hadith prophecies of Gog and Magog, and Islam's view on Gog and Magog, and refuting some critics of Islam who say that there's no metal gate or there's no iron gate that's holding back millions and millions of people found on the earth. So basically they'll say, so basically in the clips you saw before, atheist critics of Islam like the masked Arab, whoever he is, and Abdullah Samir, who are both atheist critics of Islam, say that Prophet Muhammad is wrong in saying that there's Gog and Magog, that there's an iron gate or an iron wall in the world withholding Gog and Magog, millions of people who are called Gog and Magog. So basically say their argument is that Prophet Muhammad made some kind of bizarre claim that there's an iron gate in the world withholding millions and millions of people called Gog and Magog. That's basically their argument in a nutshell. Or there's no iron gate in the world that we found that's withholding millions and millions of people, these millions and millions of people being Gog and Magog. So I'm going to be explaining what Islam's view on Gog and Magog is, and I'm going to be clarifying some misconceptions that Yasser Qadri is another Muslim apologist, makes about Gog and Magog. Now, first of all, who are Gog and Magog? That is the question we really need to ask in order to investigate this issue thoroughly. From my understanding, I don't think that Yasser Qadri is right in what he says about Gog and Magog. Let's listen to what Yasser Qadri says. These are two different videos. One is a recent video where he's talking about how Gog and Magog are, how the wall of Dhul Qarnayn is not the Great Wall of China, and I agree with him there. And he's talking about how Gog and Magog are matters of the unseen. That means only Allah knows who they are and where they are and how they'll spread across the earth. So let's listen to a clip from Yasser Qadri, who talks about who Gog and Magog are, where they are, and how we Muslims can explain Gog and Magog. So let's listen to Yasser Qadri, two clips from Yasser Qadri explaining Gog and Magog. Let's listen to it right now.
If somebody were to say, where are they now? There are some modern scholars, and I'm just going to mention this in passing, who say Ya'juj and Ma'juj are not hiding in some cave or some place. They're actually living in the lands of the Far East, and this wall is the Great Wall of China. Now this is something that some people have said. That's the only reason I'm mentioning this, right? But the fact of the matter is that that doesn't explain anything, because the Quran tells us this wall was made out of what? What are the two materials that are mentioned? Iron and copper. The Great Wall of China is not made out of iron and copper, right? Another thing is the ahadith clearly indicate Ya'juj and Ma'juj are not right now mixing with people. They're in some place separated from mankind. So if somebody were to say, how can we believe these ahadith when Google Earth has mapped the whole world? We can zoom in and see everything around us, and there is no massive land hidden from mankind. The response is, Allahu A'lam. If we believe in the ahadith, this is what the ahadith tell us.
Ya'juj and Ma'juj are a race that really are metaphysical, in the sense that we can't understand, we cannot comprehend them. They're not people that right here and now we can know, and their reality is from the ilm al-ghayb, from the knowledge of the unseen. They are not living here and amongst us that we can feel and touch them. They're from the world of the unseen right here and now, and we do not know where they are. When they come, they will come, and the Quran is explicit about this, but they are not living races that we can feel and touch. If they exist in this world, then they're living in a reality that is beyond our reality. We cannot interact with them. Secondly, this notion that the Chinese people, the Ya'juj and Ma'juj and Dhul Qarnayn built this wall to hold them in, that's ludicrous. The Chinese nation travels everywhere. This wall does not hoard them in. In fact, we're tourists here. There are Chinese people walking in and out of the wall. They go outside of the country. So even from a simple logistical perspective, this notion that Ya'juj and Ma'juj are the Mongolians or the Chinese, and this wall is the wall that is mentioned in Surah Kahf, it has absolutely no basis to it whatsoever. We believe in Ya'juj and Ma'juj. We believe in Dhul Qarnayn. We believe in the wall because the Quran mentions it. All of these, though, are not in the palpable, sensible world that we can feel and touch. This is in a reality that is beyond our reality. This is one of the signs of Judgment Day. And generally speaking, the signs of Judgment Day, they don't cater to the laws of physics. There are things that are beyond our understanding of this world. So I just wanted to correct that, and I thought this was a good opportunity, seeing that I'm on the Great Wall of China. We're here with a group, alhamdulillah, having a great time, meeting with the Muslims of this land, seeing how Islam flourished in this land, and seeing the heritage of the peoples. Inshallah ta'ala, until my next video, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So basically, you've listened to Yasser Qadri. Yasser Qadri was making the claim that Ya'juj and Ma'juj are Gog and Magog, are matters of the unseen that only Allah knows. He says that Allah knows best, right? Allah means Allah in Arabic means God. Allah knows best. So basically, when Muslims don't know, they say Allah knows best. So basically, Yasser Qadri cleared up some misconception, and I agree with him that the Great Wall of China is not the wall of Dhul Qarnayn. Because as Yasser Qadri rightly says, that the Great Wall of China wasn't built from iron and stuff like that. And the Great Wall of China doesn't withhold the Chinese people back. Chinese people are still able to pass through the wall and travel the earth and stuff like that. So, you know, the Great Wall of China is obviously not the Great Wall. It's not the wall of Dhul Qarnayn. The wall mentioned in the Quran and the Hadith and stuff like that. So, you know, that's the part where I agree. Now, the part where I disagree is where he says that Gog and Magog aren't here where we know who they are. That's the first thing that I disagree with him, which I think he's wrong. The second thing where he's wrong is that he says that Gog and Magog, you know, these are matters of the unseen. That you know, we don't know where the wall is. We don't know who Dhul Qarnayn is, and you know, we don't know how he trapped those people and things like that. And you know, I disagree with him there. Now the wall. Now let's get into what the Hadith says about Gog and Magog, because this is very, you know, the Quran says that Prophet Muhammad is the best religious authority to go to. So the Quran says follow the Prophet Muhammad. So let's see what the Prophet Muhammad said about Gog and Magog, reading from, you know, authentic Hadith. According to Sahih Bukhari, 3346, the Prophet Muhammad said that there's been an opening. An opening has been made in the wall of Gog and Magog, like this, making a circle with his thumb and index finger. So, according to a Sahih Bukhari Hadith narrated from Zainab bin Jash, the Prophet Muhammad said an opening has been made in the wall of Gog and Magog. And this is found in Sahih Bukhari 3346. So basically what the Prophet Muhammad is saying is that Gog and Magog are already out. The barrier is, there's been a hole in the barrier, and Gog and Magog are already on earth, according to Sahih Bukhari 3346. So, you know, this notion that, you know, it's that what Yasser Qadri says is that we can't interact with Gog and Magog, you know, and their matters of the unseen, is clearly false according to the Hadith, because this is, and you know, Muslims want to say, if Muslims who are watching this video want to say, no, you know, maybe this is a fabricated Hadith or whatever. No, it's not, because it goes to Quran, then it goes Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Abu Dawud, Al-Nisa, Ibn Majah, you know, Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal, etc., etc. So, and even if you read Tafsir Ibn Kathir quotes Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim vigorously. He cites them quite often. So this hadith that there's been an opening in the wall of Gog and Magog are already out there in the world, is found in Sahih Bukhari 3346. So Gog and Magog are already out. You know, the barrier of Gog and Magog is, you know, it's already been broken. It's already been, you know, it's already been broken a long time ago. This raises the question: who are Gog and Magog? Who are these mysterious, you know, people? From my understanding and from my reading of the Old Testament and things like that, because in order to I don't take the all of the Old Testament to be historically reliable. But I think this part is reliable. You know, there could be some truth, you know, in the Old Testament, historical truth. So I think from reading the Old Testament, it looks like Gog and Magog are, and this is just, you know, my theory. You know, I could be wrong, but according to the evidence, in this evidence, it looks attractive to me, is that Gog and Magog are actually the Turkish people and they're the Eastern European people, and there's a lot of evidence to support this. They're the Eastern European people, like the Ukrainians, or they're the Khazars, and there's a lot of evidence to support this. If we read, the Muslims had a war in the 13th century by the Mongols, and there's a lot of evidence that that the Mongols are part of the Gog and Magog network, and that means they're possibly the Asians or the Chinese are part of the Gog and Magog. Now, if you look at Eastern Europeans like Ukrainians and stuff like that, they have Mongolian features, but that's not what happened in the 13th century. The Muslims fought the Mongols in the Mongol invasion. So, it's possible that, Gog and Magog are, Turkish people, and Ukrainians, and the Mongols. Mongols would be the Asians, the Chinese, and stuff like that. So that's another possibility. So that's a possibility. But this idea that that there's a wall, and the wall is holding Yajuj and Majuj back, and things like that. The problem with that theory is that in some sense, it's correct that these atheist critics of Islam, like Abdullah Samir and the Masked Arab and other critics of Islam, I'm sure there are other critics of Islam that point the finger at the Quran and Hadith and say, well, this is ridiculous. There's no iron gate withholding millions and millions of people, of these barbaric Gog and Magog, whoever they are. And I agree, but you have to understand that according to this hadith that I just cited, in Sahih Bukhari 3346, the wall's already broken. Gog and Magog already got out. There's been an opening in the wall, and Gog and Magog are already out. So the wall is broken already, according to Sahih Bukhari 3346. Anyways. So, but then you might be saying, well, if that's true, then how do you explain the hadith where the Prophet Muhammad said that Gog and Magog are behind the wall, and every day they're digging, hoping to get out, and one day they will get out, by Allah's will, or if they say inshallah or whatever. Well, I looked at that hadith, and it is true that in Ibn Majah, in the book version of Ibn Majah, that hadith that's been classified as authentic. That is true, but I did some more research into that hadith, and it looks like that hadith is actually not from the Prophet, but it's from one of the Prophet's companions. It looks that way to me. Hang on, I'm trying to find it right here. It looks like, because if you read Tafsir Ibn Kathir, he says in Tafsir Ibn Kathir, in Ibn Kathir says in his Tafsir of the Quran, chapter 18, verse 97 to 98, that this hadith that the Gog and Magog are behind the wall and every day they're digging to try to get out is actually mu'al. That means it's a defective hadith. And he thinks it's a statement of Ka'b bin Abbar, as the same narration was narrated from him without attribution to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So Ibn Kathir also notes that Abu Huraira and Ka'b used to sit together so often that it's possible Abu Huraira got this narration from Ka'b, and later narrators ascribed it back to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Ibn Kathir also notes that this hadith in Ibn Majah about Gog and Magog digging every day to get out, contradicts the clear eye of the Quran that states Gog and Magog were not able to dig through the barrier, this is talked about. So anyways, basically the gate, the iron gate that's withholding them is so strong that they're not even able to like pierce it. They're not able to like dig through it. So yeah, I would agree that, Google Earth has shaped out the entire Earth, right? We know, we can see like the entire Earth, whether it's in Europe, India, the Middle East, Africa, Mexico, America, Canada, the islands in the Pacific Ocean, wherever it is. Google Earth has completely mapped out the entire Earth, and we haven't found any kind of wall, a giant iron wall or barrier withholding millions of people, because with modern technology, being satellites, Google Earth, you name it, with modern technology, surely we would have found these people by now. By at least by the early 2000s, we would have found these people. Ever since Google Earth and satellites and stuff like that. Now, so basically, the critics say that, well, the Prophet Muhammad could have gotten away with this story because 1400 years ago, people didn't have the technology to search every single area of the earth. So their argument is that the Prophet Muhammad just made up the story, or the Prophet Muhammad like plagiarized the story of people, of Jews or anything like that. So, well, I would have to argue that, Islam doesn't claim to bring everything new with it, so if the Quran's mentioning stories from before, like the stories found in, these, the infancy gospel of Thomas, or the Alexander romance legends, or the Quran mentions stories found in these Jewish Talmudic teachings or whatever. That doesn't threaten the reliability of the Quran, because the Quran, one of the functions of the Quran is to confirm what came before. So maybe these were true stories about Jesus speaking in the cradle, the Alexandrian legends of the wall and Gog and Magog and stuff like that. And the Quran came to confirm their authenticity, since that's one of the functions of the Quran. See the Quran chapter 5 verse 48. So one of the functions of the Quran is to confirm what came before, whether you can find that stuff in, it's possible that these were true stories, and these true stories made it not into the Bible, but into other sources like the Syriac Alexandrian legends, the infancy gospel of Thomas, etc. So it's possible that these were true stories, but these true stories didn't make it into the Old Testament and New Testament. Rather, these oral stories made it into the infancy gospel of Thomas, or the Alexandrian legend, Syriac or the Alexandrian legends that predate, Islam and stuff like that. So that doesn't threaten the Quran in any way, shape, or form, because Allah could have just been revealing known history to the Prophet Muhammad. So the Quran has a mode of revelation called revelation of known content. So that's basically one of the functions of the Quran. See the Quran chapter 5 verse 48. So this claim that Prophet Muhammad is plagiarizing and stuff like that is a fallacious argument. It can be refuted easily. Now, getting back to this, Gog and Magog issue and stuff like that, where are they? From my understanding, from my research and from my understanding, it looks like Gog and Magog, it looks like they could be the Turkish people, or they could be the Eastern European Ukrainians, Khazars, or they could be, the Chinese or the Asians, or, the Mongols. So these, so Gog and Magog are already out there. They're not trapped somewhere else in the world. They're not in like the South Pole or the North Pole, or some kind of hidden cave, somewhere on Earth, where like there's an iron gate that's preventing them from going out into the world. No, there's Gog and Magog are already out there. Like, you can interact with them. So this is the part where I disagree with Yasser Qadri. You can actually interact with Gog and Magog, but from my understanding, from my research, from my opinion, and again, keep in mind this is just my subjective opinion, Gog and Magog are the Turkish people, the Ukrainians, and the Asians, the Chinese, the Mongolians. So, but and this is just from my understanding of the Old Testament, because if you read the Old Testament, if you read the book of Ezekiel, it says that there's a lot of hints and evidences that Gog and Magog are Turkish people. So I'm basing my reasoning based on the book of Ezekiel. And I'm going to pull up those verses right now. So according to Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 3, it says the Bible says Gog is in Turkey. So this is further proof that Turkish people are Gog. And it also says that Noah's Ark lands in Turkey. The book of Genesis chapter 4 verse, the book of Genesis chapter 8 verse 4. So Noah's Ark lands in Turkey. So according to weak Muslim sources, and emphasis on weak Muslim sources, according to the history of Tabari, Volume 2, page 21, Gog and Magog came from the lineage of Noah. So and again, this is Tabari is a weak source, but it does seem to fit. It was fit with the Bible, but for the sake of argument, let's say this is an authentic source. And again, the Prophet Muhammad didn't say this, but it's rather one of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad's opinion on who Gog and Magog is. So if you read the full story in the history of Tabari, Volume 2, page 21, it says one of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, or one of the disciples of the Prophet Muhammad, said that Gog and Magog are from Noah's lineage. So for the sake of argument, we'll say that this narration is authentic. But anyways, this seems to confirm that this is further proof that Turkish people are Gog. And this is there's the collaborating evidence is found in the book of Genesis chapter 8 verse 4, and it says the Bible says Gog is Turkey in Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 3. It also says that Satan's seat is in Turkey in the book of Revelation chapter 2 verse 13. It also says that Iran shares a border with Turkey in Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 15. So, and you can read this further in Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 3. So it looks like Gog, at least Gog is Turkish people, according to Islamic sources. The Islamic source again being Tabari Volume 2, page 21, and the Old Testament being Genesis chapter 8 verse 4, Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 3, Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 15, etc., etc. So it looks like Turkey is actually is Gog. Now, who Magog is, it could be the Ukrainians, it could be the Khazars, or it could be the Asians, or the Chinese, or the Mongolians. But we know for sure that Gog is Turkish people, because according to according to the Old Testament, according to Tabari, according to one of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, whether this narration is authentic or not, it seems, just for the sake of argument, let's say it is, it seems like Gog is Turkey. So Yasser Qadri is incorrect in saying that we don't know who Gog and Magog is, we can't interact with them, and this is matters of the unseen. No, according to Sahih Bukhari, and again, Yasser Qadri can't go against Sahih Bukhari, because Bukhari's it goes to Quran, then goes Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Abu Dawud, Ibn Majah, Al-Nisa, etc. So after the Quran, it's Sahih Bukhari for us Sunni Muslims, and Yasser Qadri is a Sunni Muslim, so Yasser Qadri can't go against this authentic authentic hadith that I'm presenting, it says Gog and Magog are already out in the world, that there's been an opening in the wall, so Gog and Magog are already out, and this is found in Sahih Bukhari 3346. But this Sahih Bukhari narration contradicts the narration in Ibn Majah, but I already gave an explanation for the hadith found in Ibn Majah, that that this seems to contradict the claim that the iron wall can't be pierced through, that the iron wall completely keeps out Gog and Magog aren't able to, make a dent in it or pierce through it, or hammering it down and things like that. And so that wall is unbreakable to the point where they can't even pierce it, or they can't even dent it with hammers or whatever weapons they're using. But the issue of Gog and Magog, is an end time thing. Maybe Gog and Magog will, they'll become so powerful at the end times that they'll invade the world and stuff like that. According to authentic hadith, that's certainly a possibility. That can't be ruled out. Now you might be saying, what about the iron wall? What is the iron wall and stuff like that? There's an interesting theory, and again, this is just a theory. I don't know. This is just a theory that the theory goes that the wall is made out of iron and copper, right? So in the Quran. In the Quran, chapter 3, verse 7, there are some verses that are literal and metaphor. So you have metaphors in the Quran, and you have metaphors in the Hadith. There's Hadith where the Prophet Muhammad said that some of his sayings are metaphorical and stuff like that. So it's possible that that iron wall is metaphorical. It's not like a literal iron wall out there. So the reason why Google Earth and satellites and all, and mankind hasn't found that wall is because that wall is not literal. It's metaphorical. That's possible. But if we're to take this iron wall to be a metaphor for magnetism and copper to symbolize electricity, we can combine the two metaphors to symbolize electromagnetism. So it's possible that the Quran can be reinterpreted to saying that there's certain beings that will cause trouble for mankind, Gog and Magog, but they can only come into existence at some time in the future when electronic or electromagnetic technology to make them possible comes to fruition. So that's a theory that's certainly possible. But regardless, Gog and Magog I think they're already out there. I think Gog can be positively identified as Turkish people. Who Magog is, that's a separate issue. Magog could be the Ukrainians, or it could be the Chinese or the Mongolians, or it could be the Khazars, or it could be any one of those people. So according to other authentic hadith, and according to history, Muslims fought the Mongolians in the 13th century, and the Prophet Muhammad described Gog and Magog as having small faces, wide eyes, and things like that. And the description the Prophet Muhammad gave about Gog and Magog fits those of Ukrainians, or Turkish people, modern day Turkish people, or modern day Chinese or Asian people. When I mean Asian, I mean Chinese people and things like that. So that fits. So Gog and Magog are already out there. We can interact with them and stuff like that. According to Sahih Bukhari 3346, they're already out there. We can interact with them. Now the question really arises, but what about the wall? The Quran clearly mentions a wall, and Muslims can't skate around that issue. Well, it's possible that the wall of Yajuj, the wall talked about in the Quran, the wall talked about, where Dhul Qarnayn built the wall. It's possible that that wall is in the Caucasus Mountains. the Caucasus Mountain Range, the eastern and western sanctions, and that is separated by a narrow pass called the Gar-Yal Gorge. So basically, the Gar-Yal Gorge was made out of iron, and this is found in the mountains of the Caucasus or mountain range. So some modern Muslim scholars say, yeah, the wall or the iron wall that separates Gog and Magog was the Dar-Yal Gorge, but that barrier has already been broken, and things like that. Other Muslim theories go that Gog and Magog are in the Bermuda Triangle, whether you believe that or not, or they're in Mongolia or Russia or Bukhara or Dermidi or Siberia. Some Muslim theories suggest that Gog and Magog are under the surface of the earth, but if they're under the surface of the earth in caves and stuff like that, we would have found them by now. So it's impossible to hide. Like, it's impossible for millions and millions of people to be hidden in some kind of underground cave. But anyways, or some Muslim theories also hold that the North Pole and the South Pole are withholding Gog and Magog, and that means that because in that Ibn Majah hadith it says that Gog and Magog are trapped and they try to dig a hole and every day they fail to complete it. So it's possible that the North Pole and the South Pole keep snowing, and that snow or that dirt keeps burying Gog and Magog inside. So that's certainly that does make some sense. But anyways, like, the point is, many years have passed and Gog and Magog didn't invade the world. That means that the wall. That means that their time to rule hasn't come yet. As for the wall, the wall's already been broken. So any Muslim going on to some, trying to find the wall or whatever, they're wasting their time, because the wall, according to Sahih Bukhari 3346, again, it's Sahih Bukhari. It's not some weak hadith from Abu Dawud or anything like that. According to Sahih Bukhari, the wall has already been, there's a hole in the wall, and Gog and Magog are already out there. So any way you look at it, the Quran is not in error when it talks about Gog and Magog and things like that. You might be saying, well, then who is the mysterious Dhul Qarnayn? The Dhul Qarnayn means who's mentioned in the Quran. First of all, Dhul Qarnayn means the two-horned Lord, and according to some classical Muslim scholars like Al-Razi in his Tafsir Jalaluddin and Tafsir al-Jalaluddin and things like that. According to some early Muslim scholars, they said that Alexander the Great was this Dhul Qarnayn. Well, there's some problems with that, and the reason why it's a problem is because Alexander the Great was known to be a pagan polytheist. So the identity of Dhul Qarnayn is still a mystery, but some people say it's Cyrus of Persia, who was Dhul Qarnayn, and who's mentioned in the book of Daniel, or who's mentioned in the Old Testament and stuff like that. The identity of Dhul Qarnayn is a bigger issue. I'll have to make a separate video about Dhul Qarnayn and stuff like that, and who it is and stuff like that. But this video is about the wall and Gog and Magog. The whole point of this video is about the Iron Wall and Gog and Magog and who they are and the Hadith and stuff like that. So this is just my subjective opinion on who Gog and Magog are and stuff like that. So the critics are wrong. The Quran is not in error. When it talks about the Iron Wall and Gog and Magog, and Prophet Muhammad didn't make a false prophecy, because according to the Bible, according to Jews, Christians, and Muslims believe in the end times, the supernatural and stuff like that. And if you read, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran and the Hadith and stuff like that, it talks about the Gog and Magog causing problems towards the end of the world. So Gog and Magog will come, and Jews, Christians, and Muslims have to believe in it because it's all over the Old Testament, New Testament, and the Quran and the Hadith and stuff like that. So, this is one of the signs of the end of the world. This is one of the signs of the end time. So, the time for Gog and Magog to cause, global calamities or global problems will come in the future as prophesied by the Prophet Muhammad. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with Gog and Magog. But in no way, shape, or form is the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad in error about, the location of Gog and Magog and the wall and who they are and what they'll do. So this is just my 2 cents about Gog and Magog and refuting atheist critics like the Masked Arab and Abdullah Samir when they try to point the finger at Islam, saying Prophet Muhammad made some bizarre or some absurd statements about the end times because we haven't found any kind of iron wall withholding millions and millions of people, holding millions and millions of these Gog and Magog tribe. So, the Quran's not in error here. It's just Abdullah Samir and the Masked Arabs' interpretation, which is an error. So Islam is not in error regarding Gog and Magog. So that's all I wanted to say. And of course, the whole iron wall thing Dhul Qarnayn made, there are 2 ways to look at it. One is that the wall's already been broken, and this seems to fit the Hadith, the Sahih Bukhari Hadith that I cited over and over in this video. Or another possibility is, according to the Quran, chapter 3, verse 7, there's metaphorical and literal verses in the Quran. So it's possible that wall Dhul Qarnayn made, that iron wall, is metaphorical. Is metaphorical, and the wall could be some kind of metaphorical wall. And then later on, when electromagnetism and stuff like that becomes more prevalent, then Gog and Magog will be able to, wreak havoc on the earth and stuff like that. So it's possible that, the wall is metaphorical. That it's a metaphor for magnetism and copper and electricity. So, the Gog and Magog will cause trouble for mankind, or they'll become the superpower that causes destruction and stuff like that. Only in the future, when electronic or electromagnetism technology makes it possible for them to come into existence and stuff like that. But again, this is a future. Gog and Magog and stuff like that is a future event. It's a future thing to happen. It's a prophecy still in progress. It's a prophecy that's still yet to come. So who knows? When the Turkish people will join with Magog, and who knows? I'm not sure about the identity of Magog. It could be the Ukrainians or the Asians or the Chinese or something like that. Who knows? Who knows who Magog is? But we know that Gog is Turkey, or Turkish people. We know that from just from the authentic Hadith and the history of Tabari, Volume 2, page 21, and things like that. So it's possible that Gog and Magog join forces later on, and then they cause problems in the world and stuff like that. So this notion of the wall, that there's a wall or Gog and Magog or someplace on earth trying to dig every day, trying to get out, this is false. And this contradicts authentic Hadith, Sahih Bukhari Hadith, and the Quran says follow the Prophet Muhammad. Another theory is that Gog and Magog are actually not from earth. There's a hadith. There's a hadith that hasn't been proven to be authentic, because again, we have Sahih narrations, we have Hasan narrations, we have Da'if narrations, and we have Muladak narrations. Muladak means fabricated narrations. So it looks like this is a weak hadith or whatever, but there's a hadith where Prophet Muhammad said that Gog and Magog are tall, or they have big ears, or they're like they're wider than normal human beings, as you've seen in the beginning, the clip in the beginning of this video. So it's possible that Gog and Magog are in another world or another dimension, and that there's some kind of wall separating them, and that wall is the Daryal Gorge. And the reason why Gog and Magog can't come to Earth is because that wall that was built by Dhul Qarnayn, the Daryal Gorge, is withholding, is preventing Gog and Magog into coming into Earth. So Gog and Magog are in another world or another planet or another dimension, and that Daryal Gorge is preventing them from coming to Earth. So this is a supernatural theory that Allah created Gog and Magog in another world or another dimension and stuff like that. And the reason why they can't come to Earth is because that wall of that Daryal Gorge is withholding Gog and Magog from coming into our planet Earth. So it's possible that Gog and Magog are in another dimension or another planet or another universe or another galaxy, and the reason why they can't come to Earth is because Dhul Qarnayn built that Daryal Gorge, and Allah somehow, Allah with his supernatural powers is keeping, or that wall has some kind of supernatural power from Allah preventing Gog and Magog from coming into Earth. So that's, in a world where God exists, in a world where the supernatural exists, this is certainly possible, but this is kind of like a huge stretch. But this is neat. But again, that theory is the theory of the matters of the unseen. So in a world where God exists, in a world where there's supernatural, these things are possible. Jews believe Moses split the sea. An atheist with a naturalistic view would be like, no, that's impossible because miracles don't happen. But Jews believe it because they believe in the supernatural. Christians believe Jesus rose from the dead and literally flew up into the sky 3 days later. A naturalist or an atheist would be like, that's impossible. People don't rise from the dead. But Christians believe in the supernatural. They believe in God, so they believe this stuff can happen. Christians are atheists and agnostics and naturalists will be like, we haven't found any kind of iron gate withholding millions and millions of people. These two tribes, Gog and Magog, we haven't found any kind of large iron gate withholding people in the world because we have technology to map out the entire earth, and we haven't found that kind of big iron gate withholding those people. Well, in a world where God exists, in a world where the supernatural is there, God or Allah could have certainly had Gog and Magog put into another dimension or another planet or another galaxy. And the reason why they can't come to Earth, they can't wreak havoc on Earth, is because the wall that Dhul Qarnayn built, which could be the Daryal Gorge. That wall has some kind of supernatural property with that iron, and the reason why they can't get past they can't come to our world is because that gate has some kind of supernatural property where Gog and Magog can't get out. And before the day of judgment, before the end time, before the end of the world, Allah will allow that wall to lose its supernatural powers, and Gog and Magog will be able to come into our world by breaking through that Daryal Gorge, and then causing problems on Earth. So they'll come from their planet or their dimension to our planet, to our dimension, and start causing problems. And the way how they'll come to Earth is through their penetration of the wall of Dhul Qarnayn. Whether that wall is the Daryal Gorge or some other iron wall or something like that. The way how they'll enter into our planet or our Earth is through the weakness that Allah will allow that wall of Dhul Qarnayn to be broken through, and they'll cause havoc that way. in a world where God exists, in a world where supernatural exists, Allah could have certainly sent Gog and Magog to another planet or another dimension or another galaxy, and kept them there until the end times, where they'll come to our Earth and cause problems. In a world where God exists, in a world where supernatural exists, these things are possible. But again, these are just theories. Nobody has the facts. Yasser Qadri doesn't have the facts. Abdullah Samir doesn't have the facts. The masked Arab doesn't have the facts, and I certainly don't have the facts. Only Allah knows, only Allah knows, how Gog and Magog, only Allah knows the truth about Gog and Magog, but the evidence seems to suggest that Gog and Magog are Turkish people, and, Magog could be, the Chinese or Ukrainians or Khazars. The evidence points that way to me. This is just my subjective opinion, but other Muslims will say no, Gog and Magog are somewhere in the North Pole or the South Pole, or there's somewhere in the earth, whether it's beneath the earth or Siberia or who knows where they are, and Allah is preventing them from being seen by mankind, and before the end times Allah will release them and they'll start causing problems. Well, that theory also holds up, because in a world where, again, we're in a world where God exists, in a world where the supernatural is at work, this is certainly possible, but this is just my theory, is that they're already out there, and Gog can be positively identified as Turkish people, and Magog could be some other people, whether it's Ukrainians, Khazars, Chinese, Asians, I don't know, to be honest, I don't care, but my theory is that they're already out there, and this seems to in my theory actually fits in with Sahih Bukhari 3346. So it's certainly possible, but regardless, this video is already way too long. Gog and Magog are already out there in the world right now. So the Quran and the Hadith, and the Quran, the Hadith, and the Prophet Muhammad are in no way, shape, or form in error about Gog and Magog and the end times. This is just a prophecy of the end of the world, and we'll just hopefully I'll live to see it. Who knows? And as always, Allah knows best. But this is just my theories and my opinions. So the point is, Abdullah Samir and the masked Arab have been refuted. The Quran is in no way, shape, or form in error here about Gog and Magog. Thanks a lot.